Arthur's family truth. Floyd arrived 20 minutes late, handed me a bottle of wine like we were already family. Sat down, looked around the table, and I watched his eyes stop just for a second on the glass doors to the wine cellar. Then he leaned across toward me, not Sandra. Me dropped his voice so only I could hear and said it straight. Transfer 49% of Caldwell Vineyards to me before the wedding, or I'll make sure your daughter's veterinary license is finished, permanently. I have what I need to make that happen. He leaned back and reached for his wine glass. Smile never moved. Right then I knew exactly what Floyd Mercer was, and he had absolutely no idea who he was sitting across from. My name is Hank Caldwell, 58 years old, 4 years Army, Desert Storm. Came home and spent 30 years on 50 acres of Texas Hill country that my family has worked since 1887. I'm the 4th generation. When my wife Linda passed 6 years ago, I made her one promise: keep the land in the family, keep Sandra protected. That's the only thing that matters to me. So when Sandra called in March and said she was engaged to a man I'd met exactly once, I did what any man with something worth protecting would do. I started paying attention. Sandra called me on a Tuesday in March. The second she said, "Dad, sit down," I felt something tighten in my chest. Nothing good ever followed those words. I'm engaged. I forced some warmth into my voice, asked the right questions. Her guy's name was Floyd Mercer. Commercial real estate? She'd been seeing him a few months, mentioned him maybe 3 times total, always in passing, never with much detail. And now she was engaged. That Saturday, I cleaned the house top to bottom, put out Linda's good china, and cooked her coq au vin recipe. I wanted to give this guy a real shot. Sandra deserved that from me. Floyd showed up in a leased BMW. He spent about 20 seconds looking at Sandra and the next 3 minutes scanning the property. The main house, the wine cellar visible through the glass doors, the rows of vines stretching out toward the hill. I noticed that right away. He was 37, well-dressed, had the kind of handshake that's firm for about a beat too long. Practiced. The smile was the same way, technically correct, but something behind it was always running a different calculation. Mr. Caldwell, Sandra talks about this place all the time. 4th generation, right? 4th. Sandra will be the 5th. My great-great-grandfather planted the first vines in 1887. I led them inside. Floyd's eyes moved around the room the way a real estate agent's do, clocking the original hardwood floors, the custom wine cellar, the artwork Linda and I had collected over the years. Dinner started fine. Floyd was easy to talk to. I'll give him that. He asked about the vineyard with what seemed like real interest. Then the questions shifted. Production volume, distribution margins, whether I'd had interest from any of the larger vineyard groups in the region. It stopped feeling like conversation and started feeling like a business audit. When I mentioned Sandra had her own career and wasn't involved in daily operations, he tilted his head like I'd said something that confirmed a theory. Long term though, who takes over? Have you thought about that? Someone needs to be thinking about succession. Sandra touched his arm. He kept going. I actually have experience with this. Family business transitions, private equity. I've helped several families navigate exactly this kind of situation. I said I appreciated it and changed the subject. After dinner, I took them on a property walk. Floyd's questions got more specific. Zoning restrictions, land value per acre, whether I'd ever had an offer from a hospitality group or a larger wine brand looking to expand. Each question was a small test, pushing on the edges, looking for where the soft spots were. When they left, I stood on the porch and watched the BMW disappear down the gravel road. The coq au vin I'd made from Linda's recipe sat heavy. I went back inside, picked up my phone, and called the one person whose judgment I trusted more than my own. Gary Norris picked up on the second ring. Gary and I went back to Desert Storm, same unit, 91. He took shrapnel outside Basra while pulling a guy from a burning vehicle, and he hasn't asked for credit for it once in 30 years. After the Army, he went private investigation. Built a reputation for being thorough and quiet. We stayed close the way soldiers do. Months could go by without a word, but nothing fundamental ever changed between us. Gary, I need you to look into someone. His name is Floyd Mercer. He's engaged to Sandra. Short pause. What did he do? Maybe nothing, but something's off, and I need to know if I'm being paranoid or if my gut's still worth something. Send me everything you have. I'll start tonight. I sent him the name, approximate age, the city Sandra said he worked in, the BMW plates I'd written down when he pulled in. Then I went and sat in the vineyard until it got dark, which is something I used to do with Linda when something was bothering me. It didn't give me answers, but it helped me think straight. Before Gary got back to me, Floyd called and suggested lunch. Just the two of us, I agreed. We met at a steakhouse in downtown Austin, the kind of place where deals get made in low voices and nobody looks at the prices on the menu. Floyd was already there when I arrived, halfway through a glass of whiskey that cost more than most people's lunch. He leaned forward before the food even arrived. "Hank, I love your daughter. You know that, but I'm a practical man, and I think we should have a practical conversation." He said that since Sandra was about to become his wife, that made us family. And family, he said, takes care of each other. He'd been researching Texas wine country. Property values climbing every year. With the right capital and the right management, Caldwell Vineyards could be worth 3 times its current value, maybe more. "I'm not interested in selling," I said. "Nobody said anything about selling," he smiled. "I'm talking about partnership. You bring the land and the legacy. I bring capital and connections. 49% to me before the wedding, not a gift, an investment. You keep majority control. Stay involved as much as you want. We build this thing together as family." I asked what happened if I said no. He set his fork down. "Then we have a problem. Sandra's been talking to me about you, Hank. She's worried. Thinks you've been making some decisions lately that aren't quite sharp. If you won't accept help from family, that raises real questions about your judgment. Your capacity to manage something this complex alone." There it was. Clean and direct, sign over 49%, or he'd use Sandra to push a competency challenge. Put my own daughter between me and everything I'd built. I told him I needed time to think. He raised his glass. "Of course. We've got 5 weeks before the wedding." I drove back to the vineyard with my hands tight on the wheel, not scared, just angry in the quiet way that doesn't go away fast. Gary called 2 days later. "I need to come out to the vineyard tonight." He showed up after dark with a folder thick enough to be a legal brief. We sat in my office and he laid it out across the desk the same way he used to lay out maps before a mission. Methodical, no wasted motion. "Floyd Mercer isn't his real name," he said. "He was born Floyd Dunning, changed it legally 7 years ago, right after his second divorce. He was 30 at the time. He walked me through it one marriage at a time. First wife, Donna Walsh. Her family owned a chain of auto repair shops across Northern California. 6 locations, solid operation, been in the family 20 years. Floyd married her when he was 26. Spent the first year being the perfect husband. By month 14, he'd convinced her to restructure the family business with him as a co-owner. 4 months later, he filed for divorce and forced a liquidation sale. Walked away with $2 million. Donna was left with nothing but the legal fees. Second wife, Brenda Lawson. Her family ran a restaurant group in Seattle, 4 locations, good reputation, consistent revenue, same pattern. Whirlwind courtship. Engaged inside 3 months, married within 6. Floyd came in as a business partner 8 months into the marriage, said he had investors who could help them expand. 2 years later, he manufactured a dispute over management direction, forced a buyout vote, and walked with $3 million. Brenda lost the business her parents had spent 18 years building. Third wife, Carol Bennett, real estate developer's daughter out of Phoenix. Smarter than the others, she came in with a prenuptial agreement. When she started noticing irregularities in their joint accounts, she filed for divorce before he could set up his next move. She tried to warn the woman he started seeing afterward. Floyd threatened her with a defamation lawsuit and made her sign an NDA as part of the divorce settlement. Silenced completely between Carol and Sandra, Gary continued there were 2 other engagements, both daughters of wealthy families. Both ended abruptly, harassment claims that disappeared after quiet settlements were paid. I stared at the documents, 15 years of this. The same play, run over and over on different women who all thought they'd found someone worth believing in. "There's one more thing," Gary said. He pulled out a separate sheet. I had a forensics contact look at Floyd's digital footprint. He created a fake screenshot, looks like a complaint thread, made to appear like it came from a former client of Sandra's veterinary clinic. It implies she falsified treatment records and billed for procedures she didn't perform. It's designed to look credible enough to trigger a mandatory investigation by the Texas Veterinary Medical Board. I sat back in my chair. "He was going to file it if you said no to the 49%, Gary said. "An investigation alone, even if she's completely cleared, could cost her clients, cost her the clinic's reputation, take 12 to 18 months to resolve. He told me as much at dinner," I said. "I just didn't know that's what he had." Gary nodded. "He's also broke, Hank. I ran his financials. The $2 million from Donna is gone. The $3 million from Brenda is gone. Gambling losses, bad investments, a lifestyle he's been borrowing to maintain. He owes money in 3 states. Sandra isn't just a target, she's the last card he has to play. After Gary left, I sat in that office until well past midnight, reading every page. The pattern was plain. Floyd was a professional. He found women who wanted to believe in something real, and families who didn't want to believe something this calculated was possible. By the time anyone understood what was happening, he already had enough leverage to make fighting back cost more than giving in. Not this time. I picked up the phone and called Roy Foster. Roy Foster had been the Caldwell family attorney for 30 years. He'd handled our estate planning, every contract the Vineyard ever signed, and sat next to me at the hospital the night Linda passed when I couldn't think straight enough to do anything on my own. When I called him at 7 the next morning and laid out everything Gary had found, he didn't ask me twice. "We moved today," he said. 2 things, in this order. First, we transfer Caldwell Vineyards into a family trust this week. You stay on as trustee with full control for your lifetime. Sandra inherits everything when you're gone, but the business itself is locked. No sale, no transfer, no division of any kind without unanimous approval from a board of advisors. I'll put the board together, people Floyd has no access to and no leverage over. And second, a prenuptial agreement. Fair to both parties, Sandra keeps everything she builds in the marriage, Floyd keeps everything he brings in. But family assets that existed before the marriage stay completely separate. Any spouse married less than 10 years has 0 claim to any Caldwell asset. He paused. "Hank, if this man genuinely loves your daughter, he'll sign it without a word. If he won't, that's her answer, not yours. We spent 3 days building it. Roy drafted trust provisions tight enough that a team of lawyers would need years to find a crack. Any attempt to force a sale or asset transfer triggered automatic court oversight. Gary's forensics contact preserved the fake screenshot as evidence, documented, time-stamped, ready. The board of advisors went to Roy himself, Gary, and 2 of our longest-standing Vineyard partners who'd known Linda and me since before Sandra was born. Then I invited them both to dinner. Floyd came in relaxed, carrying a bottle of red he'd probably researched to impress me. Sandra was quieter than usual, reading something in the air she couldn't quite name yet. We got through the meal with small talk, and when the plates were cleared, I put 2 folders on the table. "These are for both of you to look over," I said. First folder is a prenuptial agreement. Roy drafted it, it's fair and straightforward. Second folder is documentation on the family trust I established 3 days ago. Floyd's hand stopped on his wine glass. As of this week, Caldwell Vineyards is held in the Caldwell Family Trust. I'm the trustee. Sandra is the beneficiary. But the business cannot be sold, transferred, or divided without unanimous approval from the board of advisors I've appointed. I looked at him directly. Which means the conversation we had at lunch in Austin is finished. His voice went flat. "You can't just do that. I already did. It's my property. I've had the right to do this since the day I inherited it." I turned to Sandra. "This changes nothing for you. Everything still comes to you when I'm gone. This just makes sure it arrives whole the same way it came to me, and the same way your great-great-grandfather intended when he put the first vines in the ground." Sandra looked at the folders. Then at Floyd, then back at me. "Dad, this feels like you don't trust him. The prenup protects you both equally. What you build together stays together. What existed before stays separate. Any man who loves you signs that without hesitation." Floyd stood up so fast his chair scraped back hard. He put his hand on Sandra's shoulder. "We need to talk outside." I watched through the window. Floyd paced, gestured, his face getting red. Sandra stood with her arms folded, shaking her head at something he said. It went on for 15 minutes. When they came back in, Sandra's eyes were red at the edges. "We'll review the documents," she said quietly. "We need to go." Floyd didn't say goodbye, didn't look at me, just guided Sandra to the door with his hand on her back, like she was something he was managing. I didn't hear from Sandra for 6 days. Every call went to voicemail. Every text went unanswered. Roy called on day 7. Floyd had hired a lawyer and was claiming the trust was a fraudulent transfer designed to hide assets, threatening to contest it in court. That night, I called Floyd directly. "Meet me, no lawyers, no Sandra, you and me." He agreed. We met at a bar halfway between Austin and the Vineyard, a quiet place, back booth, nothing fancy. Floyd was already there when I arrived, working through a whiskey. "Come to your senses," he said. I sat down across from him. "I want to make you an offer, $300,000 cash. You walk away from Sandra. Tell her whatever story keeps her dignity intact and you disappear. Clean exit, no drama. He laughed, not a polite laugh. Genuine amusement. Hank, the vineyard is worth $10 million. The land alone is $12. You're offering me 3 cents on the dollar. I'm offering you something instead of nothing. The trust is solid. The prenup isn't moving. Even if you marry Sandra tomorrow, you never touch this land. You're assuming Sandra chooses you over me. He leaned forward. Here's what's actually going to happen. I marry your daughter. You can come to the wedding or not, your choice. And over time, Sandra's going to see that your control, your need to manage every corner of her life is what's toxic. She'll pull away from you. And when you're old and the vineyard is just a piece of land and you've got nobody left, you'll know exactly which decision tonight cost you everything. Like Donna knew, like Brenda knew, like Carol knew before you made her sign an NDA to keep her quiet. The easy manner left his face all at once. What stayed behind it was something colder. I don't know what you think you have, he said slowly. I put my phone on the table and opened Gary's folder. Every marriage certificate, every divorce filing, every business transfer, the fake screenshot documented and preserved, his real name, his real debt. He reached across and grabbed for the phone. I didn't move my hand. We sat like that for a second. His hand on mine, both of us completely still. Then he let go and sat back. None of that proves intent. Everything I did was legal. Maybe, but a story about a man who's done this 3 times, who changes his name between victims, who builds fake evidence to threaten a veterinarian's career. That story doesn't need a criminal conviction to ruin you. Small town press, social media, the women you've already hurt who'd be very happy to talk if the NDA pressure disappeared. I picked up my phone and put it back in my pocket. You become the cautionary tale. No more wealthy families. No more fresh starts. He stared at the table for a moment. You'd put Sandra through that. Drag her name into it publicly. I'd do whatever it takes to protect her. That's the difference between us. You see her as a transaction. I see her as my daughter. I stood up 30,000 F. It's a final number. Take it and walk, or I light the match and watch. I left without waiting for his answer. Sandra showed up at the vineyard 2 days later. No call ahead, just her car coming down the gravel road mid-morning and her walking past me through the front door like she used to do when she was a teenager and something at school had gone sideways. She sat down on the couch in the living room, the same spot where she used to read on Sunday afternoons when Linda was still here, and didn't say anything for a minute. Floyd and I had a fight, she said, finally. A bad one. He told me if I actually loved him, I'd refuse to sign the prenup, that you were using it to control our marriage before it even started. She looked at me. Dad, why don't you trust him? I sat down next to her, not across from her. Next to her. What do you know about his history? Before you, he was married before. Twice, he said he was young and made mistakes. That those relationships were complicated. 3 times, Sandra. He's been married 3 times. And before you, there were 2 other engagements that ended badly. Both women from families with money, both situations that ended with legal threats and settlements. I picked up my phone and opened Gary's folder. I hired Gary to look into him, not because I don't trust you, because something didn't sit right and I needed to know if I was being paranoid or if my instincts still meant something. I handed her the phone and let her read. She went through it slowly. Donna Walsh and the auto shops, Brenda Lawson and the restaurant group, Carol Bennett and the NDA, the name change, the debt in 3 states. The fake screenshot built to look like a patient complaint against her clinic, designed to trigger a mandatory board investigation that could shadow her career for 18 months even if she was cleared completely. Her hand started shaking somewhere around page 4, not dramatically, just a small, steady tremor she was trying to keep still. He asked me about you, she said quietly. About 3 weeks ago, asked if you'd shown any signs of confusion. Forgetting appointments, repeating yourself, that kind of thing. I thought he was just being considerate. He was building a record, I said. Laying groundwork to challenge my competency if I didn't cooperate. It's the same move he used to isolate the other women, discredit whoever was most likely to see clearly, then move in. She sat with the phone in her hands for a long time. Outside, the morning light was moving across the south field, the way it always does in April. Slow and even, the kind of light Linda used to say made the vineyard look like it was breathing. Sandra stared out at it. I thought I was helping him, she said. He told me about his past, some of it the version that made him sound like someone who'd been hurt and was trying again. I thought I was the person who finally saw something real in him. You did see something real. You saw exactly what he needed you to see. He's very good at this. She was quiet another moment. Then she looked up. Call him, tell him to come here. I want to be the one to do this. I made the call. Floyd arrived 40 minutes later, and whatever confidence he'd walked in with at that first Saturday dinner was still on his face when he came through the door. Then he saw Sandra's expression, saw the document spread across the coffee table, and it left him. She didn't give him time to set a tone. "Is your real name Floyd Dunning?" He went still. "Were you married to Donna Walsh, Brenda Lawson, and Carol Bennett? Did you take money from their families through manufactured business partnerships and forced sales? Sandra, whatever your father told you, he's been building a case against me since the day we met. Did you create a fake complaint document designed to threaten my veterinary license?" He looked at me. I didn't say a word. He looked back at Sandra. I watched him work through it, looking for the angle that would turn this around. The version of events that gave him something to work with. It wasn't there, and he knew it. "It's not what you think," he said. "Those situations were complicated. People twist things after a divorce. You're only hearing one side." "Then give me your side. Explain the name change. Explain why you asked my father's neighbor whether he'd seemed confused lately. Explain why a prenup that protects us both equally is somehow a deal breaker." She stood up. "Or don't, because I already know you're making a mistake," he said, and his voice had gone cold now, the practiced warmth completely gone. "You think you're being smart, but you're letting a controlling old man talk you out of the best thing that ever happened to you. You'll figure that out in about 5 years when he's still running your life and you're still alone." "Get out of my father's house," Sandra said. "If you contact either of us again, everything Gary found goes public. Every name, every document, every woman you've already hurt who might want to talk once the NDA pressure is gone." He stood there another few seconds, then he walked out. The door rattled hard enough to shift the framed photo of Linda on the entryway wall. We listened to his car start back out and roll away down the gravel road until we couldn't hear it anymore. Sandra let out a long breath. "I feel stupid." "You're not stupid. You trusted someone who spent years learning how to be trusted. That's not a flaw. That's just being human." She nodded slowly, still looking at the door. "Mom would have seen it faster. Maybe. She also would have felt terrible about being right." That got a small laugh. First one in a while. The wedding was canceled. Deposits gone, invitations pulled back, explanations made to relatives who got half the story and filled in the rest themselves. Sandra stayed at the Vineyard for 2 weeks, just letting things settle. Some mornings she was angry, some days she barely talked. A few evenings she walked the rows at sunset the same way I do when something's sitting heavy and I left her to it, but she came back. Gary ran follow-up checks for the next month. Floyd relocated to Denver. His social media showed a new girlfriend inside 6 weeks, younger woman, comfortable family, same setup as before. Gary made an anonymous call to her father. We couldn't guarantee anything, but we could put something in front of him and let him decide what to do with it. 3 months after the canceled wedding, Sandra and I were having dinner at the big table in the main house when she put her fork down and said, "I want to learn the Vineyard." I looked at her. "You've been running this alone too long, and I've been thinking this isn't just land or a business, it's a story. 5 generations of people who built something that outlasted all of them. Mom loved this place. I always knew that, but I never really asked why. I want to understand why. You don't have to do this for me," I said. "I'm not doing it for you." She started coming out twice a week. Asked questions constantly, soil composition, growing seasons, fermentation chemistry, distribution contracts, everything. Made mistakes, didn't quit. 6 months in, she moved to the guest house on the property. Her veterinary practice went to part-time. The Vineyard became her focus. A year after the canceled wedding, Sandra closed a deal with 2 new distributors, one in Colorado, one in Tennessee. She'd identified both markets, made the initial contact, negotiated the terms, and brought it home without asking me to step in once. Revenue climbed 23% in the first year. The evening she closed the Tennessee deal, she was standing at the edge of the south field at sunset. Same spot where Linda and I used to stand on evenings when everything felt like it was going to be okay. I walked out and stood next to her. "I get it now," she said. "Why you fought so hard. Why you took the risk of me walking away and never coming back. This isn't about money or property. It's about knowing who you are and what you stand for." I didn't say anything. "Floyd saw an asset," she said. "You saw your daughter." She turned and looked at me. "Thank you, Dad, for loving me enough to risk losing me. You're my daughter." There was never a choice. We stood there while the light went down over 50 acres that have outlasted drought, freeze, 2 world wars, and 4 generations of people who all thought they were just doing what needed to be done. Floyd thought this land was an opportunity. Sandra knows it's a responsibility. That's the whole difference, and it's worth every bit of the fight it took to get there. A man who sees your family's legacy as a shortcut to wealth will never understand why some things aren't for sale, and that misunderstanding is exactly what defeats him. The strongest protection you can give the people you love isn't money or property, it's making sure they know their own worth before someone else tries to put a price on it. If this story hit close to home, drop a comment below, and if you know a father who needs to hear this, share it with him right now.